It's one of those professions.
Why don't we start out? Why don't you introduce yourself and then begin to tell us about how the history of your family here in this area?
Well, I'm Helen Struve Cotton, and we moved here to Lawtown into this house in 1933 after my grandfather Will passed away. And they settled up the ownership of the farm between his other brothers, and my dad and his brother Vertus had a partnership here. And they farmed and they did the milling work, and Vertus eventually got a job down in Clinton, and my dad also had a gravel business, and that was from the old George and Frank Snyder, the two riverboat captains. They had boats here on the Mississippi, had property east of Elmont that they hauled the gravel from. And along with that, they still did the farming here. They had the stock cows, Herefords, and hogs. And they had all the timberland here that they could get the wood that they needed for the mill right out of the timber. Most of that was done in the winter. Well, most of it was done in the wintertime when they could put the logs on a sled. That was the easiest way to get it in.
What kind of wood did they have here?
Well, they had oak, mainly oak. And that was known as Lawtown pine. You couldn't.
Oak was Lawtown pine.
You have to drill that to get the nails in.
Oh, okay.
Pretty dense. Huh?
Yeah. And white oak seems to be the favorite, and then there's red oak, black oak, bur oak, and cherry, maple, elm.
This would be original old growth?
Oh yes, yeah. Some of the trees that we took out here, they thought could be as much as 200 years old.
Did they, when they cut the trees down, did they replace them?
No, they pretty much reseeded themselves, but at that time that wasn't a problem because there were enough trees here that they couldn't begin to saw and market what they had. I mean, the timber kept up and was way ahead of the sawmill business here. And then it was in later years, probably in about in the 1960s, 1970s, my dad began to have loggers come in. And but it was rather selective cutting at that time too. They just didn't take everything in the timber.
If you had cherry, I assume that's the sort of thing you'd sell to a furniture maker, right?
Well, yes. The cherry is a really nice wood, but the market doesn't seem to be there for cherry. Walnut is the prime wood, and there's walnut up here too.
And the oak, was that sold for furniture making as well?
Some of the oak was sent over to Germany and Japan. It was put on the market and sold, taken over there, and I think it was sawn there. And of course the veneer logs are the prime logs.
What period of time are we talking about now when we're talking about harvesting these?
I think that
types
must
of
have been in
timber?
the 70s.
1970 or 1870?
1970. Yeah, prior to that, most of it was used right here in the sawmill. They sawed it right here. But as Dad grew older, he couldn't begin to saw. You know, there was just a lot going to waste because you'd have trees that were mature that would come down, and they don't lay on the ground very long before they're not worth anything. And even now, if the loggers come in here, you can have a big tree on the ground, and if it's already losing its bark, it doesn't have any value. Firewood.
how early were they exporting to Japan? I mean, Germany I can see because the families here were German, but
Well, that was done through the logging companies around here. I can't give you the name of the people. They'll probably come to me, but a lot of the logs that we've sold here went to Oxford Junction. And then from there, they seem to know who the exporters are in the markets.
the sawmill, was that all rotary blades or was it bandsaw?
The only bandsaw was inside the mill for cutting out, well, like railroad car stops, something in that order. But in the back of the mill, they were the regular round, I don't know what you'd call them, blades, big.
When did the mill first start operating?
Oh my, that would have been Billy G. Hawn, prior to Billy G. Hawn. And my grandfather bought the farm and the mill here in, I think it was 1868. And it was in operation. I mean, he rented it for a period before he bought it.
When did he first come here?
I can't tell you that. We've got the. You better turn it off and get some. Yeah, because the lumber was secondary to the
To the flour mill.
to the flour mill.
Because once I thought, when Dennis and I here, that maybe the Struve family came over like in the 1850s or something.
Well, right here, I'm just reading what she has here. It says William Struve. Now, he was your
Grandfather.
grandfather. He was born in 1858.
One of
Gee, that's and his father was Ernst Struve, Ernest H. Yeah, and they were born in Germany. And he was born in 1826, and in 1848 came to America. Texas first, then Scott County. In 1854, bought raw land in Jackson County, and in 1868 he apparently sold the Jackson County land and went to Teeds Grove. Stayed there for a year, and then he bought an interest in the Hawntown Mill. So that's how we get to here, basically. You know where they came from in Germany?
Not sure, no, but it's in the book.
Oh, is it?
So when he bought the Hawntown mill, was it a Hawntown wood mill or flour mill?
Flour mill.
Flour. Yeah.
Flour mill.
That's what I thought. I didn't think it was wood at first. So.
And Hawntown was originally known as Fairhaven. And then it was Elk River.
Okay.
Because my father or grandfather William's sister passed away, she wrote her own obituary. She wanted to be sure that had her down as being born in Elk River, not Hawntown.
I see.
They rather resented the name Hawntown.
So she was going to make sure.
Yeah.
Well, now somebody's got something circled here in this map of Schleswig-Holstein, which must be the town they came from, which is sort of the southwestern part of, it looks like Holstein. Yeah, I can take a closer look at that later. But, so they came from there to here, huh?
Some of them stopped, they came up through Texas and also into Davenport. And in some of the letters, and I think some of those letters are published in that book, that they recommended, as they corresponded to the people back in Germany who were thinking about coming over, they recommended that rather than going to Texas, try to find a climate that was more similar to the climate in Germany, because they found out that they couldn't take the heat.
So that's how they came up here,
Mm-hmm.
really looking for a better climate.
Mm-hmm. And they were looking for the right, they needed the water, the
Mhm.
river, and, an area that was suitable.
Now, had they sold property in Germany? I mean, they must have had some capital if they
yeah,
were
I
able
think
to
so.
buy things
Yes.
when they got here.
Yes, yes.
And was there any reason for them to leave Germany other than the feeling that they had better economic opportunity here?
I think that the wars over there had a lot to do with.
Mm-hmm.
They knew when they were going to be called upon, and it evidently was a war that they were not in agreement with.
Well, if they left in 1848, that was a big year. That was when they had the revolutions against the old order.
Yeah.
And
Because they talk about that too. They question, what some of the young folks are doing, and these people evidently knew when their number was coming up when they would have to go,
Mm-hmm.
because they corresponded with the Peters family here. There are quite a few of the families that are mentioned in that book. That there are family members are still around here, descendants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did they know the Peters family before they got here? Or?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be a reason for them to come if they already knew people
Right.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then their concern was, too, they were losing so many people at sea due to illness and I
Mhm.
suppose weather and whatnot. And their concern was the monies that they left behind, or any money that they had, was to see that it was transferred to the proper people.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to have some pretty trustworthy friends here
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get that set up.
Handle it for them, yeah.
Hmm.
So the first generation to come here then was E. Heinrich. Huh?
Ernest Heinrich Struve, and he lived in this house. This was his
Mhm.
house.
He built this house?
Well, I don't think he built it,
So
but
it
he lived
existed
in it. This
before him.
house was next to the mill,
Uh-huh.
and the house, the Victorian house that's over there now, my grandfather built for my grandmother when they were married. They had lived in this house, and they built the new house before they were married, and it was only built several feet. They were only, several feet apart when they were
Mhm.
built, and then they moved this house over here.
Oh, to give them a little bit of a separation.
Yeah, well, and then they had the Paul Struve family lived in that house. He was the teamster for the flour business. He hauled.
Now, is he a son of Ernest? Ernest Heinrich?
Yes, a brother to Will.
A brother to Will.
Yeah.
Mhm. Was that a large family?
It was a large family, and it evidently was a milling family.
Yeah, they say here they were millers, but this would be flour millers, not lumber mills.
Right. Yes, we got started talking about wood, and actually
Mhm.
the prime thing was flour at that time. It was a flour mill, and they did the lumber on the side.
Mm-hmm.
But Ferdinand Struve, who was also a son of Ernest, had the flour mill up in Miles. And
Mhm.
John Struve had the mill down in Lyons on, that would be North 3rd Street and Main Avenue,
Hmm.
where that
Which
mill
part of the corner?
on the southwest corner, where the gas station is now.
Where, well, now it used to be a gas station. It's now the gas station is whatever it's called is on the southeast corner. But there's an old gas
The
station
old
on the
gas station.
southwest that's being converted into a car repair place.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Isn't it
Well,
wasn't
that's where the flour mill used to stand.
wasn't the building behind it the flour mill?
I don't know.
No, they tore the flour mill down, and then
Okay.
Clarence and Hans, who were sons of John Struve, invested in a gas station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, it sort of sounds like maybe Ernst Heinrich and Hahn didn't get on that well,
I don't know.
even though they were partners for a while, weren't they?
Well, Ernest may have worked for Hahn
Uh-huh.
before he bought the mill.
Mm-hmm. because they didn't want to be known as Hawntown. They wanted to be known they were living in Elk River, right?
Well, my great aunt did.
That didn't happen in a vacuum, probably. But, well, how long has it been since the mill has operated?
Probably 1988. My father died in '88 in January, and he worked up until the last week before he died. He went out every day, and at that time he was cutting car stops for the Northwestern Railroad down in Clinton.
Just big wedges of wood.
Yeah, the wedges.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing that because he didn't have the strength to handle the big logs anymore. He could get some shorter pieces and be able to cut them up
Mm-hmm.
and handle them. And he would take truckloads down
Mm-hmm.
to Clinton.
And how old was he when he died?
Oh my, he was about 85, I think.
Mm-hmm. So he pretty much went out with his boots on. Huh?
He sure did.
Mm-hmm.
And he was falling a lot and having a lot of problems, but he insisted on going out, and he would fall down and couldn't get up again, and that was a problem. So instead of telling him that he had to stay in the house, we got a whistle that he could wear around his neck.
So when he fell down,
So when he fell down, he could blow the whistle, and we'd tell the neighbors that if you hear a whistle, call me.
Okay.
We'll go pick him up.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Sounds like he had quite a spirit.
Yeah. Yep. I just couldn't imagine making him stay in the house.
Now, how many descendants of Ernst Heinrich would you say
Oh
are
my.
here? Because, of course, if you have several generations of large families, that
Yeah.
translates into quite a few descendants.
There were a lot of descendants. Yeah, we have pictures of family reunions here in the Struve file upstairs that I imagine a good many of them are probably on the picture. But I would say a lot of those picnics probably had 80, 90, 100 people attending.
What were some of the other families that married into the Struve family?
There were Fromm's, Grandpa's sister.
F-R-A-H-M?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And they were from the Miles area. And Cooks from Miles. And now I don't know that whether
Cook,
that was
C-O-O-K or
or whether it's
C-K-O-C-H?
I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Because you have the English and the German.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's the
Yeah.
Cook family up there. Warren Cook is a descendant. He's the young man that is in a wheelchair. And I think that's K-O.
Mm-hmm.
C-K or C-H, I'm not sure. But the other Cook may be C.
Mm-hmm. Is everybody buried in Miles, or?
Oakland Cemetery is
Oakland.
where many of the descendants are buried.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Because there used to be a cemetery right here
in Hawntown.
in Hawntown.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right on the hillside up there.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
But it's unrecognizable now.
No, nothing there.
Mm.
And they tell me that that was before a little before my time. That many of the stones were pulled out and just put in that ravine that's behind the barn.
Mm.
Now they should still be there if somebody was really interested.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I think I told you, I was telling Ron when we came up here, my great-grandfather had a son who died at about age 3 months that was buried here
oh, really?
in 1863. And
In what year?
1863.
1863.
And so I don't know if they had a stone farm or not, but
Yeah.
at some point I'd love to find it if there's one there.
Yeah.
Be quite a find, wouldn't it?
It would.
Capture
yeah.
that or take a picture of it or whatever, you know, it'd be nice to.
Mhm.
Huh.
Well, I think if I found it in the ditch, I'd probably take it home.
Yeah.
I just photograph it. But, so, let's see, what else can we ask about the sawmill side of things? I think that's our great interest.
Okay.
I'm still jiggling the tape.
Uh-huh.
But there are pictures of his logging in there too.
So this looks like a stack of logs that would be 25 or 30 feet high, don't you say?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, is that you in front of it?
Mhm.
So how tall are you?
Well, at that time I was probably about 5'10".
Uh-huh. What, you grown since then?
Well, not up.
Well, let's say 6 feet. So, yeah.
Actually, I was about 6 foot tall, but I never wanted to admit to it.
Oh, that right.
I was always 10.5 feet.
Okay. It's all right. It's your story.
So these are the log trucks that would pick
Yeah.
up the logs.
Yeah,
And where did the logs get taken from here?
various places.
Mhm.
Oxford Junction was one of the main mills that we took them to.
There's still a mill in Oxford Junction?
I think so.
Uh-huh. Now this says Whelan and Sons, Winthrop, Iowa,
Yeah.
at Halden.
Well, you see, we had Arnold Bergman was our logger, and he was the one that took care of the sales of the logs.
Mm-hmm.
So he would contact the various people that would process them.
Do you still sell logs from the property, or are you just letting the trees grow?
Oh no, we'll sell them. I
Uh-huh.
know quite how we're going to do it. Whether I'm going to be able to mark trees, we got doubts about that.
You saw some last year?
No,
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, do you plant new seedlings, or do you let them
we
just
have.
happen naturally?
We have planted seedlings,
Mhm.
but we put in 4,500 walnut here on the south end.
Now, tell me what we're looking at here in this picture.
Well, this is the mill.
Uh-huh.
This is where we are right now,
Mhm.
where we're sitting. This is the house that's between us and the mill,
Mm-hmm.
and the south barn and the north barn. And then we ford the creek here to get over into the timber.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a picture of the farm.
How old is this picture? Just says Hauntown Mill, Farm, and Homes.
Let me see it again. Is there- Well, there's an oil truck parked there. I think. That's probably back in the 60s.
Back in the 60s.
Mhm.
So roughly 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. How much has it changed in 40 years?
I think the best change is our blacktop road.
You mean you didn't like gravel and all the dust?
No. It was a problem.
That was still gravel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you see an oil truck sitting next to the house, or is
That
there a
was,
garage attached?
Try and keep the dust
That
down.
is.
Huh?
Looks like it.
When did they pave the road?
Oh, that's been probably 15 years ago,
Uh-huh.
15 or 20 years ago. Yeah, that was a good change.
Did you get assessed for the paving?
Not that I know of,
Uh-huh.
unless my dad was.
So the county paved the road.
I think they might have. I'm not sure.
Hmm. But you were happy they did.
Yeah, I sure was. But we had an awful lot of traffic through here from the north and the Tees Grove area. And with the amount of traffic we had here, the dust was just unreal.
Mm-hmm. Pretty constant. pretty constant.
Yes, constant.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now they had a fire at the mill and then rebuilt.
Yeah, 1926.
Mhm.
The big mill, the old mill burned down, and then this one was constructed in its place
On the same site?
on the same
with
site.
the same foundation?
Yeah. Mhm.
So that'd be pretty much the same footprint then
Yeah.
too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Does this one look like the one that burned down?
The roof lines are similar. Well, there are pictures of the old mill in
Mhm.
here in the folder. But the old mill was much larger and
Mhm.
better constructed too.
Mhm.
And then they were damming up the Elk River, wasn't it? And having the water.
Mhm. They had a dam
Above
up north of us.
So the
Up on-
mill originally was driven
was
by
water power,
not
and
steam.
then- Well, it had steam. If the water was low, they could
Mhm.
convert to steam.
Mm-hmm. Burn up
But-
some of the wood you'd cut down.
Yeah.
And then you call that a raceway
Mill race.
Mill
the
race.
old mill race.
Mhm.
for the water?
But that had its problems too, because like any other ditch, it silted in.
Hmm.
And then they would have to get out there and let the water flow through it, and they would take shovels and stick down into the bottom and wiggle it, and get the dirt moving.
Mhm.
And some of it they could move out that way, and others, I suppose, they would have to put into wagons or whatever and haul it away, because they couldn't get rid of all the silt that way, or it would have filled up down below.
And that water ran under the mill, right?
Yeah, through the mill.
To the paddles.
Was it an overhead or an under wheel?
Well, the ones that my family had in there were vertical, horizontal, I should say. They didn't stand on end, and they're still,
You mean the wheel didn't revolve this way?
no, it went around.
Oh, that's kind of an unusual.
Yeah, there are pictures in the
Mhm.
folder of Dad down there with the
Mhm.
water wheels.
What would be the advantage of having it horizontal rather than vertical?
Well, you wouldn't have to have the water at as high a level.
Mhm.
I mean, the river would have to be up quite high, unless it was an undershot wheel.
Mhm. Yeah. Because it would be hard, I would think, to get the water channeled so you can get some force out of it. If it's
You'd
coming
have
on
to
the
have
side.
the water at, at a certain level coming out of the creek, and then
Mhm.
to go over the wheel, it would have to be quite high, really.
Mhm.
Um, the gears, and they're wooden gears, and we've had this around for a long time, and it was part of a wooden gear, and I never could quite visualize how it was used. And here it more or less explains.
Oh.
Mhm. Oh, the wooden wheel. Now this is up in Wisconsin,
Yes,
Better than that.
another mill.
and
Not
they've
my
got
time,
an
though.
undershot wheel
Yeah,
there.
but you're
huh?
kind of
Yeah.
you have a better mind for
Mhm,
that.
sure.
Mhm.
How late did the water mill run? I mean, was it running? Your dad operate that for quite a while?
That went until about, I remember when the dam went out. They used water power up until the time the dam washed out.
Mhm.
I think the mill burned in 26, and then the dam washed out after that. So I think it was sometime between 26 and 33.
Not a good time to lose asset.
No, there was no insurance
Mhm.
on the mill.
Mhm.
And Dad never had it insured either, because the cost of the insurance was just prohibitive.
Well, out in the country, your fire protection's not that good anyway.
No, and then of course with all the dust, they
Mhm.
always had the worry of spontaneous combustion.
Or dust.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that can suck quite an explosion.
Yes. Yeah.
Any grain dust.
Yeah.
As they know down at Foods, they periodically will have an explosion down there.
Do you suppose that's due to moisture, that there's some of this dust absorbs moisture or gets that it heats, or how does that?
Well, generally you're going to get dust explosion when you have a spark of some kind, either through static electricity or some other source.
Yeah.
And if you've got dust in the air, which is essentially carbon, and you've got oxygen in the air, all you have to do is hit the temperature of combustion and whammo.
Yeah.
It all burns at once, which is an explosion.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, they had an old Leroy engine, and that's still sitting over in the northwest corner of the mill.
mm,
And when it run, it just went pop, 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 pop.
oh, was
And that
it a
just
two-cycle
resounded. I don't know.
engine? Uh-huh. Could you not lean on the table? The old shake,
You're
shake, shake.
getting the vibration.
And in dancing, that's
habit. Didn't you see me do that?
No,
Dennis?
I didn't catch it that time. Didn't catch it.
Be really careful.
But so it must have been fun growing up here as a kid.
Yeah,
This kind of
because
activity going
it
on.
was just taken. The timber was there, and it was ours. You
Uh-huh.
know, we didn't have to have permission to go walking or leave home
Mhm.
because it was home.
And
So
it's
we could
pretty hard
just
to get into trouble, huh?
yeah. Well,
Well, no, not
you
really.
could get into trouble. You could get hurt or drowned,
Uh-huh.
or there are any number of things that could have happened. But it was a real common thing to just take off and walk, and there was enough area up there and dense. It was dense at that time compared to now. That you could really get lost. I could get lost. I can still get lost because I have no sense of direction. But this old engine always helped because you could hear it running down there, and it just run all day long. They were just doing something there all day. And even with the sawmill, the back of the mill, it was just common to hear those noises, you know, all day long.
Now, was it just you and your dad? You just yourself? Do you have brothers and sisters?
No,
Yeah.
no,
So you helped Dad on the mill?
no, I didn't help him in the mill.
Okay.
Used to hang around over there, but I got in on the farming end of it.
Mhm. Who was your mom?
Elta Struve. Elta Eggers Struve.
Eggers. I see.
Eggers.
So she was an Eggers.
Mm-hmm.
And your grandmother? What was her family name?
On my mother's side.
On either side.
My mother's, my maternal grandmother was
Mhm.
Stoltenberg.
I see. Well, there are a lot of Stoltenbergs around here.
And on the maternal side, it was Myers, Myers.
Mm-hmm. So they all lived in this area, or
Pretty much.
so your father and grandfather didn't have to go that far away to find someone to share their life with.
The family. And my mother's brothers and sisters were all within a 10-mile radius
Mm-hmm.
right here in the Almont, Andover, Keith Grove area.
How long has the Almont Tap been
Well, a long time.
there?
My best recollection was when it was Milo Doyle's grocery store, general merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kermit Thompson had it for a good many years too. And they had
Is it a
everything.
grocery store or a saloon?
Everything.
Uh-huh.
They had general merchandise. You could buy hardware, boots, clothing, overalls.
Oh.
They had good cheese
Mm-hmm.
and just everything you needed.
Mm-hmm.
During the strong period of the sawmill, how many employees would have been working, or how many people would have been working with your father?
Oh my. There would be 4, 5, 6 people because there was usually someone that helped with the gravel truck and then the farming.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were, I can remember a couple of older men that worked over there that when Dad was, they were good enough at it that he didn't have to be around to watch them. He could just turn them loose. And I remember one, his name was Sam Wisdom, and I can't remember who the other one was, but they were old. And at that time, they had room and board here,
Oh.
between here and the big house. So they slept and you fed them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how they did that. No refrigerators.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine?
Well, did you get ice? You know, they had
No.
ice houses then.
No. I can remember a few years when we made, well, we didn't make ice. We what did we do? We
Cut it out of
cut
the river.
ice.
Yeah.
And then
And you'd have
packed it
plenty
in,
of sawdust.
packed it in sawdust.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
So if you had a
Yeah.
building that was reasonably well insulated, it'd last.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, where they put it was under the old, they called it the dry kilt, the drying shed
Mm-hmm.
up north of the mill. And that was cut into the old tail race,
Mm-hmm.
the foundation of it. So it was partly underground and then, of course, packed in sawdust that stayed for a while.
So you say you were an only child?
Mm-hmm.
And quite a change from the larger families that came before, huh?
Yes, yes. But it, having so many of the family around, a lot of cousins, aunts, and uncles right close, you really, I didn't feel like I was missing anything
Mm-hmm.
because we always had a lot of people around, a lot of kids, cousins.
Did your mother die before your father?
No, my father died first.
He died first. So if he died at 85, she must have lived for a good long while.
Yeah, well, she lived 6 years after he died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she stayed here at home in her little house.
Mm-hmm. Well, say well.
Like during World War One.
During World War I, when they were going to ration
Yeah.
flour,
And
the Rogus.
oh, Rogan.
It was always Rogus.
Uh-huh.
And then through, and they had,
Oh, do you know Brenda?
I sort of know her,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's from that Rogus family.
yeah. But now, do they call it Rogus or Regus?
In her case, if I remember correctly, it's Rogus.
Rogus.
Yeah.
Well, some of them, they're all the same family, but some of them turned out to be Reguses.
Our age.
Because they had a fallout in the family over an inheritance of some kind.
No, not the first time that's happened. Probably won't be the last. Right?
No.
It's one of the saddest things that can ever happen.
Yeah.
And you really have to blame the generation before them, because
Things weren't straightened out.
you need to say exactly. This happened with my former wife's family. You know. It wasn't all specified, and then you get to this business of so-and-so would have wanted me to have had that.
Or so-and-so said that this was mine.
Oh, yes.
And you don't have it down in...
Show me a document. We can't talk to the person anymore. Yeah.
We've got a problem right here. Not a big problem.
Uh-huh, well,
But-
that's fortunate then. Oh,
This was supposed to be Tom's. It's understood that this is Tom's cane. I
uh-huh.
don't know whether I want this recorded or not.
I'll shut it off.
Yeah, making wine.
Alcohol. Yeah, I guess it was wine.
Out of grapes?
Grain, I think. Well,
Wine.
that would be whiskey.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
alcohol. Yeah.
grain.
Yeah. And I've got some of the bricks yet that they used. It was a brick. Well, the substance bricks are made up, and they were little squares, and then they were perforated, and it seems like.
If you could not bang on the table.
Oh, are we recording again?
I just flipped it back on again. Once we got off of the business of I won't even mention what we got off of it. But then I put, when we started
Be
talking
careful.
about making
Hands off.
when we started talking about making booze, I thought, well, this we've got to.
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk anymore.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, anyway, the distillery was east of the south barn down here. And in these pictures, there are pictures of the foundation as it was. You know, the windows were still there, and then, of course, that ended up being the cattle yard down there. And when they would haul manure out, my dad would keep finding these tiles that had been part of the old distillery.
Oh, really?
So he, of course, saved. So they're somewhere here in a box with rocks.
When was the distillery first built?
I have no idea.
Was it built by the Struves or was it built
No.
by the Hans?
Or people
somebody
prior
else.
to that even. It may have been the Hans. Yeah.
Yeah, because if the Struves got here in the 1850s, the Hans couldn't have been here that much longer beforehand.
No.
I mean,
Yeah, I was reading one of the articles in here on Hahn that he bought the land at a Dubuque land sale like in 1846 or something. like
yeah,
that.
that's when my great-great-grandparents bought land in Elk River Township.
Okay.
Not far from here, too.
What?
They were Irish. Their name was Lynch. But the Bulger was I mentioned my great-grandfather whose brother's son is supposedly buried here. Their brother-in-law was James Bulger. And
Anything to
which
do
is
with
named-
Bulger's Hollow?
I assume so, because that if I went and I got all the land records and they're all clustered right around where you now have Bulger's Hollow on the maps. There must be a connection there.
Yeah.
Now, we had a relative of Billy G. Hawn's that stopped here one time. And that's probably been 30 or 35 years ago, and I have his address, but I'll bet it's not the same anymore after all those years.
Yeah. Are there any Hans that still live around here that you know of?
I hear the name Hawn once in a while, but I don't know whether there's any relationship.
Well, and of course the girls' descendants would all have a different
It'd
name
be
anyway.
a different name.
Yeah. How about the Cottons? Did the Cottons live in this area beforehand?
In the Sebula area.
Oh, Sebula.
Sebula and Horicon, Wisconsin as well. Joe's father died before he was born, about 3 months before he was born. And at that time, they had a woodworking mill up in Horicon, Wisconsin. And from what I understand, they turned out these fancy porch posts and fancy turnings for homes. And when Joe's father died, his mother came back to Sebula. Her family name was Thompson. They had the Thompson, or Tommy Thompson's grocery store up there. But she came home before Joe was born to be with the family here. And then they lived here ever after.
So you got to know your husband through the wood business?
No.
Nothing to do with that?
No, nothing to do with that. Just coincidence.
Did Joe work in the wood business?
No. His father did.
Yeah, but not here. He didn't.
But
Your dad.
no, well, there's a lot of the wood here that came out of the mill that he just went over and he could run the machinery. And if we needed a piece of wood for the corner or for whatever,
He cut it, huh?
he just cut it out. And we didn't even have a electric sander when we moved down here. And the paneling that we put up here in the house, that was done around 1950. And we had the panels laid up on sawhorses, and he put all the marks in them. We didn't have pre-finished plywood. When did that come in? Surely, was it not available, or why did we do that? and finished it all, put driftwood stain on it, and then used deft lacquer. But it was all done by hand.
Oh, wow. I think it's that wall there that's
Birch.
done. Yeah.
That's a mistake.
Yeah. And Joe did that?
Yeah.
Because those are all solid boards the way they look.
Yeah. No, they're not.
Aren't they?
It's
Veneer?
it's paneling.
Okay.
When you say it's paneling, you mean it's veneer.
Yeah, plywood.
Mm-hmm.
Just plywood.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just made kind of the cuts in it.
Yeah, he
for
put the
decoration.
cuts in it. But we weren't too well organized because they're not even the same as what's on the other wall.
Well, you know, the Curtis Mansion downtown, you go into one room, and all the wood in that room is oak. You go into the next room, and all the wood in that room is maple or something.
Yeah.
So,
But they didn't mix them up.
not in the same room. No,
No.
that's true.
But the clock came out of the timber. That is a piece of red oak.
Mm-hmm.
And our minister came down and wondered if we would like to donate a tree for the church's new altar for the church. So we cut a red oak tree, and Arnold Brugman took it up to his place in Luxembourg, Iowa, where after it was sawed, they took it out to Oxford Junction and had it sawed, and then he hauled it up and put it in his building to air dry it through the summer. Then it was taken back to Oxford Junction where it was kiln dried, and then from there up to the TM's Woodwork in Preston. And he made the altar, and then there were 800 board foot in this one tree. So we had enough for 2 grandmother clocks. So that way, Mother had one and I had one, and then there would be one for each of the kids. So,
You have 2 kids?
yeah,
Oh, that's right. You were talking
yeah,
about that.
yeah. Yeah.
And so who made the clocks?
Tom McNeil from Preston.
He cut the wooden panels and assembled them into the clock, and then, of course, bought the works.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's see. We have a particular picture right here.
I think he's got
We
it
have
down.
something that's being driven by a belt, and this looks like a
It's a
engine over here.
Climax engine.
Made right here in Clinton, huh?
Yeah. And Dad worked for the Climax Engineering Company the first year that they were married. And this is the line drive that drives the saw over here in this area.
Oh, so this is all to drive that saw.
Right.
huh?
And then this is a small uppercut saw, and the big one is down partially in a pit here underneath.
And
I think this is my dad. I don't know who's helping him.
now here,
That's
turbine
the-
is in the mill basement. huh?
Yep. And that's my dad.
That's your dad. How old would he have been in that picture?
Oh, probably 75,
Oh, he's 75 there?
I would guess.
Certainly doesn't look 75 to me. And this is where you got water power?
That's the old mill dam.
hmm
And it looks like the beavers got to this tree. They got that in there too. But now we were up here earlier this spring, and this area is all washed away. It's gone.
The concrete isn't there anymore at all?
Yeah, and then the rock area that goes over to the hillside, that is pretty well eroded away too. And when you get to the west side of it, where the creek side, you look into it, you can see where a lot of these rocks have already begun to fall in the creek. There won't be much left of it in years to come.
I'm amazed that the creek would have enough power to be able to transport the rocks.
Well, that looks like a good idea.
Is that a drawbridge or a string bridge or a
I
rope
think
bridge?
so. Uh-huh.
Was that out back here?
Yep. Well, it's up just a little ways. Not very far, though.
Now, who's sitting here on the? You got a couple of guys here.
This is Arnold Struve. He's the son of Paul, who used to be the teamster for the mill. This is the flume where the water came out. It went through the mill, through those wheels, and came out here. This is Harvey Struve, the son of Will, my dad's brother. And this flume is underwater now.
Oh, it is.
There's that much silt washed in here that it isn't visible anymore.
And this is all concrete.
Yep. Yeah.
So somebody put a lot of concrete in between
Oh,
that
yeah.
dam and the
Yeah.
flume.
You see that little drawbridge? It was whatever you call it.
Well, it looks like it's a rope
Yeah.
bridge.
Yeah,
isn't it?
suspension. It's
Yeah.
suspended.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a. I was going to go down here. It seems to me that I saw. Let's see here.
Just still running the camera.
Yep.
Oh dear. We're
Uh-huh.
shaking the table again.
Oh, well, that's okay. I'll turn this.
Now into the family.
Everyone posts in front of the dam, huh? Now, was that what I saw before was concrete, and this looks like they had rock.
The concrete was in the center portion,
I see.
and I suppose there were gates there.
Mm-hmm.
And the rock went over to the hillside, to the north.
So this is just a different portion of the dam.
Right. It's quite a long dam.
Hmm.
Have you found pictures of the old mill yet?
Not in here. This looks like it's mainly clippings from the newspaper in this particular file.
Here's, here's another one.
It says mill. But... Oh, this is the old building.
Yeah, that's the old building. There are better pictures than that. We'll come
Now
on
this
to
is the
them.
one that burned. Now this
Yeah.
somewhat resembles the mill up in Bellevue, doesn't it?
It does,
Mhm.
the shape of it.
The Potter's Mill.
This is some of the backwater behind the dam. There's another picture of the dam. Now I wonder, you know, the machines that they had down in the like at Walgreens, where you can duplicate
You can
pictures,
scan
you
'em.
can darken them, and sometimes it's surprising how much you can add to these pictures that
Yeah,
comes up.
suck a little more detail out of them.
Yeah, this is my dad loading flour onto a wagon from the front of the mill. I think this is the celebration when they planted the centennial tree. Did you find I just found this and put that in there. It tells who is involved with planting the tree. Oh, this is the old mill race.
Mm-hmm. With the water gone down. Now this looks like pictures of family members. Catherine
Yeah,
Struve,
yeah.
which she
This
had
would
been-
be Ernest Heinrich's wife,
Uh-huh. So she'd be your great
great-grandmother.
grandmother.
She's the one that lived in this house.
She lived here.
Here's another picture of the spillway. Well, here's a good picture of the mill. I like the one with the wagon.
Mm-hmm. Put all these mill pictures together here.
I need to have my glasses.
Now she was, if I remember correctly, she was a number of years younger than Ernst Heinrich, right? Wasn't he born in 1826? Did I see her somewhere around there?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like one of the same.
With the wagon in the front.
Yeah. Here's one that does not have a wagon.
That one is like this one. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about the same picture here.
Looks like
In
it's
fact,
from-
it is. See the person on the corner of the building? Same thing there. Now this is copied by Johnson Photography. If you want me to make scans of any of these pictures, I have a scanner. And I can make a scan for you of any of these pictures.
Yeah, we've got plenty of pictures of the mill.
Uh-huh. These are some negatives
Helen, is that
of the log
Century Tree
strong.
still?
No, it's not there anymore.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there was a picture in 1963.
Yeah, and that's my son to the right,
Okay.
and the neighbor boy, Jim Spaulding, to the
Okay.
left.
Mhm.
This is a view of the back.
Planted in 1876.
Pardon?
Oh
said
yeah,
planted in
I saw another one here
1876.
Yeah.
somewhere that
Wow.
looks a lot like that. If it's not the same picture, it's pretty similar. Don't know where it is right now.
Did a lightning hit it or something, or what happened with
It was an elm tree,
Oh.
Dutch elm
Dutch elm
disease.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I have so many regrets there too. Dad had the sawmill. Of course, that tree set in the neighbor's pasture,
Oh, okay.
so it wasn't like it was our tree.
Ah,
And I wanted the worst way to have the trunk of that sawed up to use. I thought for the historical society
Right.
showcases,
Yeah.
or and we didn't get the job done.
hmm.
So you're blinking. Maybe you're out of film now.
Well, I don't know whether we're out of
That means
film
it's
or...
running.
No, the blinking means we're recording. Well, we are getting close to being out of film.
Maybe it's just a warning. that
It's
you're
got
about.
56 minutes on there, so we got about 4 minutes to run before that film is off. It's not film, it's tape, of course, but anyway.
It's in a shovel.
Mhm.
Distillery with a capacity of 9 barrels a day.
Well,
There
it's
you
enough
go.
for me.
Yeah. I'm sure it held a lot of people over at, 9 barrels a day, so that was good.
Actually, I don't like whiskey to speak of. I'll stick with beer or wine.
Would you like a cordial?
Oh, no. A little
Sue
early
said
in
on
the day.
phone, did you have some or make some or what?
Yeah, I ever. Didn't you ever have red raspberry cordial?
No.
Oh, it's about time.
It's my time.
Now we're recording, and Dad's Ranger bike. I never had a new bike.
What's a Ranger bike?
It was just a big brown bike that had some wood in the wheels, and the tires were glued to the rim.
Yeah, and that's the one that's still sitting
In the mill.
In the mill. It's over there, Mike.
But in the evenings, we rode bike back and forth, Dan Smith and I. Sometimes you'd put objects in the yard, and you'd ride along and be able to straddle that object, and and one wheel on one side and the other one on the other side, and we had a course that we run.
Simple was good.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting to think, there are, for you to be able to say that he was your best friend. So then the question is, how did that chemistry take place? Obviously there's the father-daughter relationship,
He was just a good
which is
person.
always special.
He was just special.
You've got some great clippings here. Have you done all these clippings, or were they?
Probably a combination of me and my mother, and
Uh-huh.
in Fisher Hollow. The house was emptied out, and the letters all ended up in that house up there. And they were the grandparents of Georgiana and Paulina and Evelyn and Edward. And Georgiana and Paulina were the ones that pursued this because they have a house in Clinton, and their next door neighbor, I think it was the next door neighbor, could read the old script.
Mm-hmm.
and she translated all the letters for them.
Do the old letters still exist?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure they do. Hmm.
Was that one of the Bosch girls or something like that that did the translation, did you say?
A friend, their neighbor, did
Their
the
neighbor.
translation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, both the Bosch girls are teachers, so they, I think, did a really good job of putting it together.
Mhm.
And they spent a lot of time at it, too, I'm sure.